Hey guys, I am here today to teach you how to take a chintzy plastic skeleton and corpse it so that it looks disgusting and amazing just like this one. Before we go and get into all of the gory details, please take a minute to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and hit that bell icon. That way you'll be notified every time I put out a new project or other content. Now let's dive right into the build. I started out this project using the Home Depot Howling Wolf animatronic skeleton and went ahead and cut the head off. That way I would have a wolf's head to work with and still have to figure out something to do with the rest of the body. I also want to give a huge shout out to StiltbeastStudios here on YouTube. His videos are how I learned to do this corpsing technique. So I have his channel linked in the description below, as well as the video that I used to learn this process. This process is pretty easy. You just end up taking your skeleton, skull, whatever you want to corpse. You need a heat gun and some of the chintziest, thinnest plastic drop cloth you can get. In this case, it's 0.7 mil. The thick stuff won't work very well. You want the thin stuff. Because this is a battery operated skull here, and I don't want it to be constantly doing this while I'm trying to work, I'm gonna go ahead and remove the batteries. It's real easy. Just go ahead and unscrew the battery compartment screw. Try not to throw it and lose it. Open it up and take the batteries out. Going to put this back in so we don't have to deal with risking losing it. One thing to note is that once this is corpsed, there does need to be a cutout so this battery compartment can be accessed, as well as something for the speaker and the switch. Normally I would leave the jaw on, but because it's articulated like this, I think I'm going to go ahead and remove it. This will just make it a whole lot easier to work with when we're actually putting the plastic wrap on. Now that we're ready to start wrapping that jaw, just take a piece of our plastic and cut it off. Go ahead and open it up. I'm going to go and cut it into some slightly smaller pieces, just be a little easier to work with. The beauty of doing a project like this is that nothing has to be precise. If you screw it up, you can either take it off and do it again, or just wrap more plastic right over the top of it. This process is really simple. Just going to take our plastic wrap, make a thin wrap around whatever our piece is that we're trying to work on, heat it up and melt it down to the plastic. We're just going to continue going on and doing the same thing and trying to make some gnarly skin looking stuff in here. If you screw up, you can just pull it off or wrap a little bit more plastic around it. And having this a little bit crumpled up is what's going to make it look like shriveled skin. So you don't want to pull it nice and smooth. When I'm doing this, I like to try and at least make what I think would be some muscles. So we're going to have a larger chunk wrapping up this way. And letting the plastic get some holes melted in it works very, very well to look like decomposing flesh. So that kind of thing, those strings and those holes, in my opinion, are actually a good thing to have. I think we're going to call this jaw good enough. Next, we're going to move on to the head. I prefer working on things that have openings, so like full skeletons or jaws that have a bit more holes to work with. That way, you have more places that you can make the plastic sink in like this. I like to start with the loose ends when I'm doing this. That way the loose ends will melt to the other plastic and it becomes more of a sock and it won't be blowing around and getting everywhere. You just kind of feel this out as you go, see how the plastic's behaving, how the piece is behaving. There is no real science to it. It's just trial and error. I think we're going to call that good because the more I keep going, the more likely I'm just going to make it a lot worse. The next step, once all of the plastic is wrapped around, is to take some gel stain. This here is Minwax Hickory. I've played around with some other colors. You can do interesting combinations, but this is what I have at the moment. And we are going to effectively antique this. So we're going to take just a really cheap chip brush, gel stain, brush it on, and then wipe it right back off. And that is what is going to bring out all of the little lines and nastiness. You don't need very thick coating of this on here, because again, all we're trying to do is highlight all of those little crinkles and crevices made by the plastic. Now that this portion of the head is done, I'm going to go ahead and just wipe this gel stain right back off. You'll see as you do it, it highlights all of the little crevices and makes it look like wrinkled, nasty, decayed skin. I think we're going to go ahead and call that good. Just do the lower jaw now. And there we go. Now it just needs to go sit and dry. So now I'm going to go ahead and try to add some coagulated blood onto here. Maybe put some back here where it's going to get mounted. Kind of make it look like it was severed. So go ahead and let this dry and see how it turns out. In order to protect everything, especially the blood, because it is water soluble, I'm going ahead and clear coating it. I'm hitting the blood with a clear coat, and I'm hitting the rest of it with a satin just to prevent it from looking too shiny. As you can see, I have gone ahead and reattached the jaw. Just using those screws, I went ahead and just painted over them with a Sharpie. That way they blend in a little bit more. The other thing that I went ahead and did is relocated this push button. The cable on this push button was quite long, and I didn't want it to be. So I shortened it, and I ran it right here. The way that I shortened this wire is outside of the scope of this video. I ended up cutting it and repinning the connector on shorter wires. That requires some specialized tools and some specialized know-how, and it would just be too much to get into in this video. But then to secure it in place and hide it, I covered it in some 1-minute epoxy and then put a little bit of wood stain on top of that just to blend it in. I also then glued with some epoxy this wire, or this button, to the body of the skeleton, or of the skull, and also just brushed it with some wood stain to help hide it as well. To finish this off, I would like to mount it on this board to make it kind of like a trophy head sitting there. Unfortunately, it is quite front heavy. The thing weighs, with batteries, about 1 pound 4 ounces. So it's quite a big force trying to pull it off here. So I think the way I've decided to mount it is go ahead and I'm going to put a bolt through here like that. And I'm going to take a screw eye, or basically a bolt eye, like a machine bolt. I'm going to put that in here, and the bolt in there is going to thread through this. And then this is going to go through the board and provide support holding the top up here. I'm going to fill this up with epoxy putty. Something like this. Doesn't have to be this, just some kind of epoxy putty. And that's going to add a bit more structural support inside, as well as hopefully give some bonding to the wood. And then finally, I'm going to run a couple of screws through here and here to go into the board to help stabilize it, because just hanging off here, it can wobble around. So hopefully between the epoxy and those screws, it'll hang out and be pretty solid. By taking this bolt eye here and basically seeing where I can fit it inside of the neck, I've gone ahead and estimated where I want to put my hole. You probably can't see it, but there's a tiny little black dot there. And that is spaced so that I hope this bolt can be, or this nut can be recessed just a little bit in, so we don't have a bolt sticking out. I'm not sure how well that's going to go, but I'm going to give it a shot. This is what I was hoping for. You get this screw head nice and tight up against the plastic. That way I can get some epoxy on it and paint over it. And then the same kind of thing with this side, so that that bolt is not sticking out very far. I can get the nut on it and, again, epoxy over it. And next is we're going to have to see whether or not the screw eye fits, if I got my locations right. There we go. This was the goal. So now I have something nice and strong that can hold this against the plaque. It doesn't stick too far out. Hopefully, I can get that through all the way through the plaque. It looks like it's going to come up a little bit short, but I can work with that. I'll just go ahead and recess the hole for the nut on the back of the board a little bit. This is fairly thick, so I'm not too concerned about that, and that I can give it a nice clean looking finish. I didn't show this in the video because all it is drilling a hole, but I went and found the center of this plaque where I want it and where I wanted the head to hang. Went ahead and drilled a 3/16 inch hole for the bolt eye, and then on the back I went and countersunk a larger hole so I can get that the nut to stay flush with the back of the board, and that allows me to use this smaller length. To put it together, just put that through, flip it over, go ahead and put a washer on, and then thread the nut in place. And this is how you're going to be able to adjust how far out this sticks. Based on my experimenting, I think just a hair, for me it's just a hair past flush with the end of the bolt or machine screw. So you push that through. Then to mount the head, all you do is place this over the eye. Feed your other machine screw through it. You have a nice, pretty mount. Now all that has to happen is getting extra attachment in there, filling this thing up with some epoxy putty just to lock everything down and glue it to the board, and a couple of screws somewhere in here to help hold the bottom in place so it can't flop up and down. To use this epoxy putty, you just cut or break off a piece that you need, and then knead it for 30 seconds until it's nice and evenly mixed. This particular one is JB Weld Steel Stick. It only has a 3 to 5 minute working time, so don't have a lot of time to get this done. I'm just going to go ahead in here and shove that bolt through and put that other machine screw through the eye. Now that we've gotten that through the other side, pack this back in, and this is already starting to set faster than I'd expected. In order to get locations for where to put some screws through the board into the back of here, I'm just going to place it on the back. I realize these are not symmetrical, so obviously things will be reversed on the other side, but it should be close enough to give me a rough idea of where to go, with the ultimate goal of getting the screws into this hard plastic here, and then hopefully into some of that JB Weld as well. This is the area that I have to work with when I go to put some screws in. Going to go ahead and put another round of epoxy putty in, just help fill that out, and that is what's going to sit against the board. It seems pretty well mixed. Place that through. Now go put the nut and washer back on, and we'll try and pull this nice and tight against the board. This hole's a little bit small for this, so it's a bit tricky. And looks like I got a little bit of leakage here, so I'm going to try and real quick clean that up. I think that's about as good as we're going to get it. Just got some basic drywall screws here and hoping to get this before it fully dries. They're a little long, so I'm just trying to make sure that I'll go at a bit of an angle and don't pop out. And that should definitely help secure it in place. Screw didn't pop out, so it's going in here, at least through the plastic, if not into some of that epoxy. So that should help to make sure that nothing moves. I'm going to do it on the other side as well. It's probably overkill, but I'd rather be safe. With this on here, I don't think this is going to go anywhere anytime soon. One of the very last finishing touches is going to be putting a little bit of epoxy over these, and then going to put some stain on top of them to make them hide. I meant to get clear epoxy, and I ended up with a translucent yellow, but I think it'll still work. Now that this is starting to set, I'm going to finish up by just sealing off this nut. This is just to make sure that it doesn't come undone, since this is the real structural part of this entire piece. And that's it. Let's check out how it turned out. I hope you guys liked this video, and like always, please take a minute to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that bell icon. And feel free to leave any comments down below if you have questions, thoughts, or if you go ahead and build something like this on your own. I'd love to see it. And with that, happy Halloween!